If you've spent any amount of time listening to our podcast, then you know that we often give the tip to slow down when you lift weights. But is this just something that we say, or are there actual differences that you will notice when you start to employ this tip? On today's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, Julie and I share what we have experienced within our own bodies when we changed how we went about doing our exercise. We're going to cue the intro song, and then we're going to dive right into this conversation. Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we're talking about exercise, health, and the interconnectedness of the two. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we will be coming to you every single week from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we're coming to you from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, here in Schaumburg, Illinois, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset, and the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. Now, if you are looking for a way to build the health and function of your muscles at home in under 25 minutes using minimal equipment, then you are going to love the MAS Home Workouts Bundle. This bundle contains over 100 workouts, and even if you don't have time to work out, even if you haven't exercised in over a year, even if you feel like you have no idea what to do when you exercise, there is something in here for you. To learn more about this bundle and to download your copy, go to homeworkout.matschaumburg.com. Now, today we are talking about a tip that we give so often here on the Exercise is Health podcast, which is when you do your resistance training, move slowly. The question is, though, is this just something that we say, or are there actual benefits to moving slowly? And on top of that, what changes have we noticed within ourselves when we started to really use the tip of moving slowly?
I'm excited to talk about this today because I always love hearing Charlie's stories. Like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but Charlie used to be like the YouTube making moderate meathead, but more like sports performance-y. And so I just love his evolution stories. Mine's probably not going to be quite as good, but if you ever are on YouTube, please feel free to search Charlie Cates, because you will probably, will people find videos?
Yeah. For
old
sure.
videos of you with a buzzed haircut, and
You know,
just excellent. They're great resources.
It's funny that you bring that up, because I'm thinking a lot about, the promotion that's going to go on for my book that's coming out. And I thought I really need to break out so much of that old footage and so many of those old pictures I have for myself, because I have a ton of how I used to work out, and really use that for the promotion of the book, being like, exercise doesn't have to be this way. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I've been actually thinking about it quite a bit. So if you don't want to search YouTube, don't worry. They will be on full blast over the next couple months as I go into full promotional mode for my upcoming book. But anyways, that's kind of a side note, but I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I think both Charlie, you and I were exposed to moving slowly in the gym when we started to get into the resistance training specialist world, RTS, and that is the kind of specialty education that Charlie and I both have. It's very intensive. But one of the big keys is that the whole goal of exercising is to work your muscles and stimulate your muscles. And a way to do that is to make sure that your exercise is muscle centric, right? The whole goal is muscles doing stuff, not other stuff, meaning not lifting weights, not staying to the beat, not following the choreography, not whatever. So we were both exposed to this, and I think that that's how we started shifting our own workouts to moving more slowly, which, as you can imagine, when you move slowly, it leads to having more control, having more awareness. But we wanted to share our own experiences with how it felt on our bodies, and what we've learned from that. I think I had a huge lesson when I started doing it, and I'm sure Charlie will have a few as well.
Most certainly. I mean, I know that when I first got introduced to the concept of moving slowly, I thought that, oh yeah, this will be, something easy that I can start doing right away. And what I noticed, it was actually really challenging for me, because I was so disconnected from my body, and because I was so used to actually trying to move really fast, because I thought the whole goal of lifting weights was for the weight to go up and down. And if the weight went up and down more times, or if more weight went up and down, well, cool. Then that had to mean that my body was healthier and functioning better. But the reality is my body was just continuously breaking down from my workouts. And it really wasn't until I changed how I was going about exercising that my body not only got a chance to heal, but also got a chance to rebuild itself. And then from there, I could finally start to build my strength, build my endurance, build my capacity, and then start to get back to like working out really hard. But because my body had such a solid foundation now, it didn't take the tax or the toll that it did on my body previously. So I've definitely noticed a lot of changes within myself.
Did you feel like when you started moving slowly, you had to back off a bit in terms of whatever you considered to be like a hard workout?
So there was two things. One, I backed off the volume, and two, I backed off the load, because when I was moving slowly, the relative intensity actually went through the roof, meaning what I was doing like for a specific group of muscles, the specificity of the exercise increased substantially when I started moving more slowly. So for example, let's say I was doing a row exercise, okay? Mm-hmm. And first of all, it was difficult for me to really feel like my upper back and the back of my shoulder muscles and how my shoulder blades were moving and all that stuff. And then once I started being able to feel that, I realized that I needed to substantially decrease the weight and decrease the volume, because now all of a sudden I could really target those areas while I was doing a row versus like using my trunk to try to move the weight and thinking like, okay, well, as long as the weight stack's going up and down, then I'm accomplishing the goal here. So I dramatically reduced the weight. I dramatically reduced the volume that I was doing, but because things were so much more specific, the intensity for each relative area went way, way higher.
I wanted you to clarify that, because I have parts of my story that I felt like a huge piece was backing off the intensity. And now if you're listening to this, you might be thinking, well, don't you want to do more to get like more stimulus, to get more change in your body, to get healthier, right? Well, the thing is remember, the goal of exercise is to stimulate your muscles. And when you take steps to kind of zoom in and to specify muscle stimulation, and you stop using other stuff, mainly momentum or compensation, like using other parts of your body to move things, you'll notice that you actually normally have to back off on certain areas so that you're not overstimulating the muscle. It's like this stimulus is now so much more potent when you move slowly that you almost have to back off, and you still get the same amount of intensity or stimulus or even more, but your body's also not used to that kind of specificity.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I would say roughly I had to reduce all my weights by about 50%. And you might hear that and think, oh, well, doesn't that mean you got weaker? It's like, no, actually, my exercise got a lot more focused. So I didn't need to use as great of a load in order to actually get a better response than I was getting before, versus the previous stimulus was just so much more general because of compensation, because of using momentum, that it took a lot more load to try to get even the same amount of stimulus. So that was definitely something that I noticed.
So when I was exposed to starting to move slowly, move with control, and that muscles were like the whole goal of this exercise thing, that was pretty shocking to me, because I thought exercise was about having fun and socializing. The way I fell in love with fitness was through group fitness and also working out in the gym, which always happened with a friend. Like I never worked out by myself. It was always with a friend, and it always was someone else was leading me. And then, after 2 or 3 years, I was now an expert, since I had been led through a gym through someone else, non-expert-ish. Then I was the leader. So that's how I was brought up in the fitness world. In addition, I was very into movement. I loved moving. I loved exercise. I loved dancing. I loved swimming. I just liked moving. And so a lot of my gym experience was not only not focused on muscles, but it also was not focused on weight training specifically. I did a lot of quote unquote functional stuff, a lot of the different training techniques that don't use weights. I did a lot of group fitness, of course. And so I was introduced to these both at the same time. So I kind of had a double whammy where I realized, and the importance of weight training was highlighted to me. Not only that, but also to do it with this very muscle-centric focus. So as you can imagine, my body was very deconditioned from that. Like I could do a whole bunch of other stuff with my body, but I was not very conditioned at lifting weights in a very specific manner. And so I remember my first couple workouts, it was like, okay, wow, this is like so intense because number one, I'm not used to consistently being on machines. And then second of all, moving so slowly where that my muscles are really on fire. Like they were just the center of attention, which they should be. I just was really not used to that at all.
So what did you notice like within your body after you finished exercising those first few times when you would do your really slow workouts?
Okay, so this was actually something I was hoping to bring up because it was a lesson I learned, and now we use it to talk about in our podcast and how we apply it with clients. But I actually did not feel great after the first times of doing this, and probably for the first good month, I didn't realize that muscle focused means that it's all about the muscles during the workout and after the workout. Because remember, we don't work out to work out. We work out for the positive health changes that it brings about. So you always have to be analyzing, how do you do afterwards? So the problem was that I was using a lot of the same weights that I was using when I was using momentum and moving fast and kind of flinging and using other body areas, meaning the stress was distributed amongst many, many muscle groups and muscle areas. And then I kept the weight, but then I isolated it to a more specific area. And that was hardcore intense. And I felt usually like crap the next day, meaning I was really sore and achy. I often had headaches from it. And I often would be ravenously hungry and have also like flu-like type symptoms. Those are all signs that you've done way too much. To me, at the time, I was still in the headspace of like more is still better. So, well, great. I'll have this way to make it more specific. I'll just do more of that. And I didn't realize, and I didn't have the perspective that it matters how you feel afterwards too. Meaning I would have probably gotten more benefit had I done the style of slow weight training, but taken off a lot of the weight and volume, just like you were talking about, Charlie. That way my body could actually heal and recover and maybe not have that much to heal and recover from the following days so that I can keep getting the health benefits. As you can imagine, you either have two choices when you end up in the situation I was in, which was I was working out and feeling like crap after and having all the signs of this was way too much. You either just keep doing that and then run yourself into the rabbit hole of just extreme exhaustion and fatigue, which that was the route I went. I didn't have the right goal for exercise. I was using it as something fun, right? And something to do. Or, so you can keep compounding these way too intense workouts and then run yourself into this extreme fatigue, again, which is where I ended up. Or you can say, okay, I'm working out and then I have to take a 4-day break before I return to it. And it's not great to take 4 days off from exercise because there are so many health benefits that you can get from returning to exercise every single day. So if you're able to structure your workouts so that you're not having to take those 4 days, then that is the best option. So the thing I learned, again, I gained the perspective that, hey, the way you feel after is almost the most important thing relative to your workout. You just have to learn your body and learn how it should feel during so that you can try to strategically get that result. And second of all, I learned, you had to back way off when you add this piece of intensity. Like we always think of intensity like more weight, more reps, but you have to remember more intensity could be more specificity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really key point is that as you're able to get more specific with your exercise, the intensity in that area that you're working, it increases, and it can increase quite a bit, even if the volume doesn't increase, even if the load doesn't increase. So, Julie, how did you go about approaching your workouts then to kind of get your body not only feeling better, but to the point where you're like, okay, now I can exercise harder again, because you're able to exercise really hard right now. And so kind of what was that process like?
Great question. So I told you guys, I just kept doing this crazy workout, and it probably didn't look crazy from the outside, but it was just way too much for like where I was at condition wise, where I was probably like hormonal wise and my stress level. As you know, all of that stuff plays into how you're able to work out. So I ended up with some chronic fatigue, and I'm going to try to be as accurate with this as possible. But I remember at one point I was using so much external the caffeine and stimulus stuff to even function, that I remember, I think I even told you, Charlie, I said, I just feel tired all the time. Whenever I feel tired, I'm going to do exactly what I think I need to do, which is sleep. And so I remember I was working like a double shift at the gym I was at the time. Like I started at 6 a.m. and it ended at 2. And then I would go back for evening clients. So like at 5 or something. So I had like that 3-hour block. And we only lived, 7 minutes away. So I would drive home, I would take a nap, and then I would go back to the gym. And I probably did that for a good month or 2. And that made a huge difference. And I remember, I don't think I really worked out during that time. I didn't know how to work out to be respectful of that situation. Now I definitely would have worked out through that given what I know now. But, I was using the best knowledge that I had. So I didn't work out. I probably walked. And of course, I was active with clients. And I think I was still teaching 1 or 2 group fitness classes. But I would always keep the intensity for myself low. So I did like 2 months of that. And then I remember I said, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to ease my body back into this. So I'm just going to do weights for about 2 minutes a day. And I remember I would pick one exercise and I would do a few reps and sets of that for 2 minutes. And eventually I just kept building up and building up and building up until I was able to do the entire workouts that I wanted to do. And if you know me, I don't do these crazy sports performance-y or meathead type workouts. They just are like regular workouts. It's just I couldn't tolerate it before. So what I've learned from that, and you've heard us talk about this in the podcast, is that wherever you are condition-wise, fatigue-wise, nutrition-wise, tolerance of your body-wise, wherever you are, you always have to be doing what you can do to eventually do what you cannot do. So meaning you have to stay within your limits. And if your limit is 2 minutes right now, great, do 2 minutes and build it up. But don't push it to 30 minutes if you can't handle that. Now, if you can handle 30 minutes and you're only doing 2 minutes, your body will lose conditioning. You will lose strength. You will lose all that stuff. But if you can handle 3 minutes and you keep doing 5 minutes and you're blowing through your tolerance level, that's going to have those negative repercussions like I experienced. Same goes for amount of weight, amount of reps, amount of, again, time or endurance. So always trying to figure out what can I do today, not what can I push myself to do today.
One thing that I want to highlight that you brought up that I think so often gets overlooked and really just gets disregarded altogether is you brought up that you took a relatively long period of time off from exercising, meaning relative for you, right? You were exercising essentially every single day, and then maybe you took a month or 2 off of exercising. You said, knowing what I know right now, I would have been able to exercise through it, but I didn't know what I know right now, so I had to just completely stop. And I think a lot of people find themselves in that situation where the only thing that they know from an exercise perspective is go. Like that's the only option that's presented to them. And so they think if it's not full on go, well, then they can't do it. But then what I loved, you said eventually it got to the point where like, okay, I need to exercise. Like I know that I need to exercise. I want to get back to exercising. So where do I start? Well, like you just wrapped up with, you have to start with what you can do. And then you slowly build that from there. And I think one thing that again, so often is misunderstood is this idea of, well, if you want to work out for 20 minutes, the best way to work out for 20 minutes is to work out for 20 minutes. It's like, okay, well, the best way to work out for 20 minutes is to work out for 20 minutes only if you can work out for 20 minutes. But if you can't work out for 20 minutes right now, meaning like physically your body cannot tolerate doing it in the manner that you want to do it, well, then you need to do less than that and eventually build up your body's tolerance to be able to get to that 20 minutes or whatever it is. So I think that's really such a crucial point that a lot of people miss when they're thinking about how their own body responds to exercise and how they feel after their workouts is, oh, I feel so achy, beat up, and sore. Well, I just need to keep doing that, and eventually my body will catch up. Eventually my body will start feeling better, and as I get used to it. And it certainly may, but who's to say that's not without negative unintended consequences, versus you say, well, why don't I find what my body can do and tolerate really well and then build off of that. So I really like that part of your story. I just wanted to kind of circle back and highlight that, because when we're talking about like the differences that we noticed within our body when we started changing how we are exercising, yes, it goes about how we're physically feeling. It also goes about like mentally how we thought about exercise and the role of exercise and the goal of exercise. And I thought that point really highlighted it nicely.
And Charlie, I want to jump into, where we are today with moving slowly, because as you guys probably assume, we still weight train with control and slowly. I do want to circle back to one other thing in my story, because I want to make sure that you understand this piece and you don't misunderstand this piece, if that makes sense. I don't want you to feel that if you were to start moving slowly, that you are also going to run the risk of going into this extreme exhaustion and fatigue that I did. A little backstory, I was running, 45 to an hour every day. My goal was like to hit 15,000 steps before 7 a.m. usually, things like that. So it was like a built-in process. The reason I wanted to bring up a fatigue piece that I experienced was that when you start moving slowly, it adds a layer of intensity. That was the main piece of it. And so if you're listening to this, you likely won't run yourself into that, because now you understand that going slowly is actually like adding that intense layer that now we see and we acknowledge. And you're going to be much smarter than I was when you start to move slowly. So let's talk about where we are now and what kinds of benefits that we love feeling and seeing with our own workouts, because we move slowly and with control on the regular.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start. So with myself, I mean, my body has completely changed as far as how it feels and how it functions since I started changing how I go about exercising. Everything before was lift as much weight as you can, as fast as you can, as many times as you can. And that was more or less the whole intent of my workouts. There was a little bit more strategy and a little bit more tact involved, but that was essentially the basic mindset that I had. So it was heavy squats, heavy deadlifts, power cleans, box jumps, sprints, banded bench press, for like speed reps and stuff like that. Like everything was moving really fast. But as I talked about, I was so disconnected from my body because my whole focus while I was exercising was all external to my body. Move the weight, faster, time, speed. That one thing that I've really noticed once I started lifting slower, and that where I'm at right now, is I feel like I have such a direct connection with the different areas of my body, the different muscles of my legs and my arms and my core. When I do an exercise, if I feel like I can't make a direct connection there, I know I need to change how I'm going about doing that exercise, either how fast I'm moving or the weight that I'm using or how I'm setting the exercise up, or I need to do a little bit more prep work prior to the exercise, because I'm like, I know that I can make a connection right in the area where I want to. And so moving slowly has allowed me to practice that. And then it's allowed me to build it. So then in daily life, like for example, I hardly ever golf, but whenever I go golfing, I feel like I can control my body so well, because I can feel the different segments of my body moving, and I'll be like, oh, you know what? I hit the ball a little bit weird that way. Oh, I felt my forearms do this thing that I wasn't really intending to do. Okay, I need to change that slightly. So I feel like I have such greater ownership of my body now.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That is in one way how it really can benefit you doing the stuff you like to do in life, because again, a lot of us work out for the health benefits, but also so that we're physically able to enjoy the stuff we want to do. And so for you, that is like golfing sometimes, or whatever else you enjoy doing. Or
sometimes it's like once every 2 years.
Well, it was a lot more sometimesy before we had kids.
That's true.
And now it's like,
yeah.
Maybe this year I'll go.
Right, maybe.
We'll get back to it.
Yeah. But in addition to that, like from a general like kind of performance measurements, honestly, my strength has gone through the roof.
Yeah.
I feel like I am way stronger now than I was when I was trying to move fast. Actually, I ran my fastest 1 mile time ever last year, and it's not like I never ran or ran mile times before. running a sub 6-minute mile was our conditioning test for basketball in college. So I had practiced getting faster at running a mile before, but 12 years later, I broke my PR. So, running faster, I feel like I can still move my body really well. But like I was saying, I have more ownership over my body. Not only that, but when I lift really heavy now, because I have ownership and connection to different aspects of my body that I didn't before, I can feel when an exercise is getting to be too much or I need to make a change. And so because of that, my strength is really high, but those negative repercussions that I was feeling before from my workouts with the entire rights of my body being tight and everything like that, I don't experience that anymore.
Yeah, so to sum that up, Charlie's just still peaking, He's just
never stop peaking.
I know. Okay, so I just have a quick story before I tell you about mine. So Charlie's on a few high schoolers that with MAT, and they like to exercise and all that stuff. And Charlie to a high schooler looks like not in high school.
An old guy.
Basically an old guy. So one day he comes in, he's like, "Yeah, Charlie, how much do you do on the knee extension?"
Yeah, I'd say.
I forget how the story goes.
So I told him, I told him that I had set a PR for the amount of weight that I could do on the leg extension machine.
Yeah.
And he goes, I go, guess how much I did? And he goes, I don't know, like 160. And I'm like, 160? No, I maxed it out at like 305 for multiple reps. He's like, what? I do like 180.
So, to sum it up, he thought Charlie's max was less than him.
As an old guy.
Because he's old, right? Because Charlie is old. But anyways, good news for everyone listening. You can just keep getting stronger.
Exactly.
Anyways, I just love that story so much. Okay, back to the point of the conversation. One thing I love about moving slowly is that it actually is a result of that ability to be connected to your body, is that I feel like each area of my body I get to customize. Have you ever been injured or you feel like one joint is not working well? Maybe you hurt your knee or you sprained your ankle or you have a plantar fasciitis flare up or you have tendonitis in your arm. You're like, I just can't work out. I've got this thing going on. Well, that thing is affecting one area of your body. Good news. There are many other areas of your body that can keep conditioning and keep strength while that area is not functional. One thing that I've experienced, yes, are these joint things, but also over the last 3 years, I've been pregnant more than I have been not pregnant, I think, or pretty equal amounts of time. So there is this huge change in one certain area of my body. And so what's great is that I never had to change and do like pregnancy workouts. I never had to change and do like, oh, this is for, when you're pregnant. Because I want to do exercise that is for my muscles, not for my pregnancy. So I've always exercised, yes, making changes, but always with this constant check-in, moving slowly. And just because my abs are stretched out to all belief, I can still work my biceps. I can still work my glutes. I can still work my hands, all the other areas of my body. But moving slowly allows me to have that constant check-in and constant feedback so that I know when to stop. I know when to keep going. I know when to add more weight. I know when to back off. And so I love this piece about moving slow. It just really allows you to customize each area, which will allow you to keep your body as healthy as possible, even if one area is not working so well for a period of time.
I love that idea of customizing certain areas of your body. And I've never heard it articulated that way. But as soon as you said it, I'm like, it makes perfect sense. Because like you're saying, you can get so much more specific with your exercise for certain areas. And so when one area has had enough, when one area needs a little bit more, you can make those changes so much easier when you're moving slowly, because not only are you in tune with your body, but you can get more specific with your exercise for those areas. So I love that. So this idea of moving slowly is something that really has transformed both of our bodies from a health and function perspective. Now, I know it's something that we say a lot on this podcast, and for good reason, because it is one of the most powerful things that you can do with your workouts, especially if you're used to moving fast. Look, it's not going to decrease your speed. It's not going to decrease your strength. It's not going to decrease all the things that often people think it's going to decrease with their health and function when they start moving slowly. But what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to really start to experience certain areas of your body, to make your exercise more customized, more tailored for different areas of your body, and allow you a greater ability to recover from your workouts, which ultimately will allow you to exercise more frequently and for the long term as well. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that moves really fast with their workouts, or has heard this idea of moving slowly when they lift weights, but they don't know why they should be doing it? Send this episode to them so they can hear what we have experienced within ourselves once we started incorporating this idea of moving slowly. And while you're online, head on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find this podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and when they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week. Hey there, it's Charlie again. One last thing. I want to let you in on a secret project that I've been working on for quite some time now. I am planning on releasing a book by the middle of summer 2021. But here's the thing, because I'm self-publishing this book, there's only going to be a limited number of copies available at any given time. So to learn more about this book and to be one of the first to find out when this book actually gets released, what I need you to do is go to exerciseforlifemethod.com. There you'll find out more information as well as some exclusive bonuses that I'm offering just for simply staying in the loop with what's going on with this book. So to learn more and claim your bonuses, go to exerciseforlifemethod.com, enter in your information, and you'll be automatically kept up to date. Learn all about the book and bonuses at exerciseforlifemethod.com. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Cates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.